Please put it on silent. This is the October 23rd, 2008, 3:30 meeting. Caddo Parish Commission. Roll call, Mr. Clerk.
Sir. Ms. Baker. Mr. Cox.
Here.
Mr. Dominic.
Present.
Mr. Epperson.
Here.
Mr. Escaday.
Here.
Mr. Jenkins.
Present.
Mr. Lynn.
Present.
Ms. Lynch. Ms. McCulloch. Mr. Pearson.
Present.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Thibodeau.
Here.
Have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. This time, we'd like everyone to stand for Mr. Dominic will lead us in our invocation and Ms. Lynch in our pledge.
All bow our head. Dear Lord, just thank you for allowing us to be here today and watch over and protect us and be with us as we go forward with the business of our parish and community. And give us in our many sins and our failures and faults and where we fail you, dear Lord, and praise your name. All these blessings upon us. In your name we pray. Amen.
Okay.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Oh. All righty. Adopt the minutes regular session meeting held on October 9th. Have a motion? Moved by Commissioner Pearson, second by Commissioner Escaday. Any questions on the minutes? If not, please vote. And that passes. All righty. Any special resolutions today?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. Communication reports.
Just have one brief report, Commissioner Cox. Commissioners, good afternoon. Mr. McCullough asked me to give you all an update on the solid waste function within the parish. And I want to let you know we did prepare a brochure that talked about the times and locations at all the 18 sites, and we'll make those available to you all. We have them at the compactor sites, and we will try to put the schedule on our website as well. And I just want to let you know that as to recycling, we've been in the recycling business since 1990. And approximately, we earn about $90,000 a year in recycling metal products. And we also will be participating in Pratt Industries when they come online next year, first part of next year, in recycling cardboard products and pen products. So everything is going well within that department. And I believe Ms. McCullough may call a subcommittee meeting on either the 3rd or the 6th of December to talk about the operational hours. So I know she is not here now, but she asked me to convey that to you all. That concludes my report.
Okay. Before we suspend the rules, we had a commissioner that had invited some guests today, was not put on the agenda, so I'm going to allow these to come before us. I will yield the chair to Mr. Epperson. Mr. Epperson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, in light of the upcoming elections, which probably will be proven to be a heavy voter turnout, as well as I think we've had very heavy registration. We've also had heavy early voting. I've been receiving some concerns about some different questions relative to our electing operations, especially when I've seen some things that has been transpiring nationally. Realizing that I know we have a registrar of voters office, a clerk of courts office that historically we've been number one, we've been above board, and we continue to do so. We feel that we have the best anywhere within the state of Louisiana or the nation. So therefore I had invited Mr. Ernie Robertson, the registrar of voters, to come up and let us know what the situation is at this point in time with the voter registration, early voting drive, and what we're going to do to be proactive, hopefully in anticipation of a heavy turnout on November the 4th. Also, Ms. Diane Doherty, the administrative assistant from the election department of the clerk of court's office, that's Mr. Gary Lofton's office. They are in charge of the commissioners and the voting machines. I also invited her to come up and let us know what's going on with the process, the type machines we use, and what we are doing, because we want to make sure that we are on top of anything that we may foresee that may cause us a problem. And Mr. McClung, I think that's right, he's in charge of our precinct in our polling places. We want to make sure that everything we're ADA compliant. We're probably able to handle the heavy traffic and things of that nature. So at this time, I would like to for them to appear in this order: Ms. Diane Doty first from the Clerk of Court's office, Mr. Ernie Robinson from the Voter Registrar's office, and Mr. McClung from our Facilities Department.
Good afternoon.
No, Mr.
The Caddo Clerk's office is once again very hard at work. I'm sorry.
Name and address.
Diane Doty, 500 Texas Street, room 103, Shreveport, Louisiana.
Thank you, ma'am.
We're very hard at work at this time preparing for the November 4th election. As you know, the presidential election typically is a very high voter turnout, and we're trying to prepare our commissioners to anticipate this high voter turnout, as well as prepare them for the party election in the U.S. congressional race. This election will be voting for the U.S. President, U.S. Senate. There are 7 constitutional amendments, and then there are the parish propositions. We have 2 judicial election runoffs for our 1st Judicial District judges, and there's a constable race, a runoff in the constable race in Ward 6. These elections will not, it doesn't matter how the voter is registered as far as their party. No matter what your registration is, you will be able to vote on any of these candidates. If you are voting for the United States representative for the 4th Congressional District, we will still have party lockouts for that particular race. We'll begin having our pre-election schools for our commissioners this Saturday. As we do with any major election, we have a pre-election school. We go over all the rules, the laws, anything they need to know about setting the voting machines, and any information we feel is necessary for them to have for the election. And we will begin those this Saturday. In Caddo Parish, we do use the Sequoia ABC Advantage machines. We've had them approximately 12 years in this parish, and have worked very well for us. Never really had many problems with them. We like the fact that we get results very quick on election night to give to the public and the news media. We do expect heavy voter turnout, and that's one of our major problems with the voters. This is the one time usually they'll have to stand in line to vote in Caddo Parish. That doesn't normally occur. Just have to be patient with the commissioners. We can just get so many people in a voting machine in the precincts at one time, but everyone will be afforded their right to vote. The clerk's office has extra staff that we plan on having available that day, going to the different precincts. We're going to be checking on the commissioners at the polling places. We're going to be assisting voters in getting in the right precinct. We have many locations where multiple precincts are located within one building, and that's very confusing for voters. So we'll have extra staff from the clerk's office in some of these areas assisting these voters in getting in the correct precinct, so they won't be standing in a line that's not the correct precinct for their voting place. We feel that we're ready for this election. We're ready for to get everything taken care of, to get the voters taken care of, and we wouldn't expect to have any other problems that we've never had them in the past from other presidential elections. It's just that it's going to be a heavy voter turnout.
Okay, Mr. Epson?
Diane, the security of voting machines, whose responsibility is that?
The Secretary of State's office is responsible for the voting machines. However, once the machines are sealed, which for this election they will be sealed October 31st, and then will be sent to the polling places on Monday, November 3rd, for the election on November 4th. They become the custody of the clerk's office. Mr. Lofton is the official custodian of voting machines for Caddo Parish, and they will become the custody of the clerk's office at that time. Once the election ends on November 4th, machines will be picked back up from the polling places the following day, And then Friday, November 7th, is when we actually will break the seals on the voting machines and check the protective counter and the public counter.
Okay. The commissioners, are they in charge of enforcing the, what is it, 600-foot electioneering limit? Are those areas marked? How do you go, people go by recognizing that?
They're not marked. The commissioners are responsible for anything at their precinct, maintaining any kind of order at their precinct. And if there is usually if there's a problem, we have sheriff's deputies that are on duty for us, that the clerk's office has on duty on that day, and we will send a sheriff's deputy out to assist them with any needs that they have at the polling places.
Testing of the voting systems, who's responsible for that? Say like maybe you do a trial run, you punch a few things in and
The Secretary of State's office has technicians at the voting machine warehouse that sets the voting machines, they program the voting machines and test them prior to the October 31st date of when they're sealed.
Are those technicians on duty at all times, or once election over the place, the facility is just locked up and maybe looked at periodically, or what?
Well, no, they're on duty at all times. Now, once the election is over and we break the seals on the voting machines are sealed until we receive a release from the Secretary of State's office, which usually comes after the time for filing a lawsuit. If no lawsuit has been filed, then they will release the machines at that time.
Okay. And how long is that period of time?
A lawsuit must be filed by the 9th day after the election, which I believe is going to be November 13th. Is going to be the date for any lawsuit contesting an election.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. And Mr. Pearson.
Yeah, I just want to follow up on the 600 feet, because I did have a problem in my district in the primary, excuse me. Is it the responsibility, whose responsibility is it to mark off 600 feet?
I don't think anything is actually marked off. It's, if someone is wanting to campaign at or near the polling place, it's their responsibility to know that they're at least 600 feet away. Many times when we send the deputies out to the polling places, people are not not aware of how close or how far they really are from the front door, and usually the deputy will measure off the 600 feet and advise the person where they need to be, and we normally have no other problems after that point.
I think they would move, the people will move. It's just that I think in the primary, in one of my polling places, they were too close, or closer than 600 feet, and I was asked, how are they supposed to determine it 600 feet? And I just told them, it looks like inside 600 feet, ask them to move, and they moved. So
the deputies that we have employed with us on that day have the a little wheel that they use to measure off the 600 feet for them, so that the person can actually see that the deputy is telling them within the right distance. And most of the time, the person that is in violation of the 600 feet is unaware of the law, and are usually, once the deputy tells them where they can stand or how close they can stand, it's fine. We never have any other problems out of it.
is campaign paraphernalia, and T-shirts, buttons, that kind of thing, is that also restricted to?
It is. If a voter, our commissioners are instructed, if a voter comes in, they're wearing any kind of campaign information, whether it be on a T-shirt, a button, a hat, anything, they need to leave the precinct, turn the shirt wrong side out, put on a jacket that doesn't have any kind of logo on it, or something to cover up the actual campaign candidate's name or whatever's on the shirt.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? I don't see any other names.
Let me just say, you have to get to the end of the line if that happens, right? You can't.
Yes, ma'am. Usually that is a problem.
So, all right, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts?
Ernie, you look pretty good out of that office. Don't see us more often.
I'd like to ask the commission to command me to stay here to past 6 o'clock.
Hey, Ernie, even though we all know you, name and address.
Ernie Robertson, Registrar of Voters, 525 Marshall, Suite 103. Let me just first of all start thanking you for your incredible support through the years. It has been beyond belief sometimes what you've done for us, and I appreciate it greatly. I'd also like to thank a couple of your staff members, if you don't mind me saying so. First of all, I'd like to thank Leon Gafford, who this year provided maps for candidates and worked with us diligently in getting the judicial sub-district straight. That's not an easy task, believe me. And so we appreciate Leon's work a lot. I'd also like to thank Keith McClung and Mike Cox. Anytime we call them, they're there. And I personally appreciate that because that really helps us out. And I've got to say one other thing, and even though I'm just going to say it while he's here, and that's Woody Wilson and Erica and everybody on the admin staff. They always help us a lot, and believe me, behind the scenes, it's been quite a year this year. But I'd also like to tell you a few things that we've done. You've always wanted us to have early voting ads and ads for close of books and try to let the public know. And so this year we've expanded. We are advertising in 5 different newspapers this year, not only the Shreveport Times, Caddo Citizen, Shreveport Sun, the Forum, and the Inquisitor. Those are the main areas that we have actually advertised in to try to let the public know what are the dates, what are the times, and it does help quite a bit. We've also got some added hours for early voting from the legislature. It used to be we did the absentee voting 5.5 days. And now we do early voting 7 days, and we also are doing it from 8:30 in the morning till 6 at night. I think that's really going to work out better. It's a little bit longer for us, but it's going to work out better for the public. Once they get used to that, we're seeing, of course, a big turnout this time. 603 the first day, 624 the second day. We're voting people at faster than 1 per minute. The only problem is if you're the 50th person in line, you got to wait for the other folks 1 per minute for 50. So it makes it kind of long, but that's part of the process. And we use, of course, the state computer system for that. I'd also like to thank Mayor Glover sent us some benches for folks to sit on this year. I think he didn't appreciate having to stand as long as he was there last time, and I appreciate that. We also have a new website, caddovoter.org, debuted last Friday, caddovoter.org. And what we've done with that website is we've done a lot of linking to the Secretary of State and some other sites that people can pick up information. It makes it a lot quicker for the voter than trying to sort through the Secretary of State's website, I think. And it's gotten some good response. I've actually had people come in during early voting and say, I've already gone to it. So that's good news. The biggest question on Election Day is the same question we've had for years. And I don't know how to solve it. We've tried several different ways. It's the biggest question in elections all over the country. Where do I vote? 90% of our calls on Election Day, regardless of how you boil it down, is the same question. Where do I vote? And this is not particularly because of Motor Voter, but that didn't help it. Even though we mail everybody a voter ID card, a lot of folks still don't know where to go vote. So that's one good thing about having a website now, that we can direct them to that website. It's a little quicker through our website than trying to get through the Secretary of State's, even though it's a link. It's just a little bit quicker to find it on our website. So hopefully we'll be able to direct them there. Our community organizations will be able to direct them there. Also, one of the other things that I would encourage you is whenever you are a candidate on the ballot, please tell people they can look up their polling place. They can look up a sample ballot. They can even look up a map to the polling place by going to that website and then looking for voter information under their particular name. It's called Polling Place Information, a poll locator on the Secretary of State's website, and that way they can go and find out where to go vote. It's very important because if you don't know where to go vote, you're lost. And 92% of the calls we get on Election Day, where do I go vote? Okay, that's some of the things we're preparing for. Of course, I don't really know how you prepare for early voting with that many people other than being ready and having everything ready to go and having as many people as we can working on it. There are some limitations due to our physical plant, but as we all know, whenever we moved over there 10 years ago, it was really built for by paper voting, and what we had then, which was absentee. So we've kind of had to adapt as they moved in machines. We used to have 12 stations whenever we were voting on paper. Now we have 9 machines set up, and you have to have a provisional voting area. So we actually have 9 machines set up. I only have 10 anyway, so we got that extra one there in case we have a problem.
Mr. Epperson.
Thanks for coming, Ernie. I appreciate you taking the time out. And we have had an excellent relationship, and I appreciate all that you've done throughout the years. I remember when we got the new machines, we brought them out within the communities and let the citizens have an opportunity to look them over before we had an actual vote. My concern is, I saw in the paper this morning, and I think I saw on television, Senator Vitter came and he mentioned about voter fraud. What we've received an abnormal amount of applicants from a certain group, or what? And first of all, how would you what's the definition of voter fraud? Now, it appears as though what I read was the applicants, okay? Is it someone that may get a card and come up and try to use it illegally with another name and not that person, or what? How do we define that?
It's actually under registration. You know, sometimes the newspaper puts voter fraud. It's actually under registration. And the problem that we had, and it's now all over the country, we particularly had voting as power. Other folks are having Acorn. And it's always with paid voter registration groups. It's not your community groups. After the 2004 election, I was invited to go to the Election Assistance Commission in Washington and testify on third-party registration groups. And I went there and told them what a great job and what a great relationship we had with a group called Voices for Working Families. It was a union group. It was here in 2004. And we did have a good experience with them. They did about 5,000, but they were just excellent. They were duplicates. Sure, they're always going to be duplicates. But we didn't have registration forms that we would go through, and it would be a legitimate name, let's say. From our standpoint, it would be an address and a phone number, and we'd they would put it into the system, and it would clear through the system, let's say. And then you'd hear from the widow saying, why am I getting this card? My husband died 15 years ago. And what we'd find is that someone had filled out a card using a phone book. And you'd have the name, the address, the phone number's correct, but all the other information, particularly the age, would be incorrect. And that was one portion of it. Another portion of it wound up being people that they were giving fraudulent addresses that didn't exist. They didn't exist in our database or anybody's database. And then we would also have folks that were registering under other names, and you would look down in now under what we call Help America Vote Act, or the HAVA verifications. You have to give either your driver's license if you have it, or the last 4 numbers of your Social Security number. And so as we checked them through both of those computer systems, and we didn't have that in 2004, Commissioner Epperson came in 2006. Whenever we checked them through, they'd kick back to us. And of course, that also generates a HAVA letter, is what we call, which gives the person 10 days to contact us. And we never hear from them. And that's because they just weren't legitimate to start with. And you'd also have signatures on there that clearly it was basically the same person signing them. I mean, you look at them and it was pretty easy to tell. And so what we did was, it was in the major parishes in Louisiana, Caddo, Orleans, Jefferson, and East Baton Rouge. We contacted the Secretary of State's office and sat down with Secretary of State Jay Darden in a meeting and discussed what we were seeing. There were like 17,000 applications all of a sudden appearing in East Baton Rouge. We had 8,600 here. They came in over a 10-day period, and that's about 5% of our registered voter base. And the first group, 4,600 that just appeared at our front door. They just came in and put in 4,600, and by the time one of my staffers went to ask who it was, they were back out the front door. And then we kept getting other ones delivered to us. And the problem was that whenever you start talking about 8,600 applications, I got to go through every one of them. And the first thing I do is I sort through it and see if they're complete. If they aren't complete, then that person receives what we call a request for additional information under the National Voter Registration Act standards. And so we sent that out. I had to hire 8 people just to help us sort through and start going through all these applications. And we sent those out. It just so happened I had hired 4 student workers. And I was going to do something else with them, so I swapped them over to being kind of the folks writing out the request for additional information for us. And then we started trying to put them in. They kept kicking back out, and you know, you have to mail a letter to them, or you have to send them a request for additional information, or ask them to verify certain information. And by the time we sorted through them, we had a July 19th election, which meant that we had to close the books around June 19th. And we had to get these things done by basically the end of the month. And so we spent almost the entire month of June. That's the only thing we did. We just didn't have anybody else to do anything. And the entire resources of our office were turned toward processing what turned out to be a tremendous, a lot of things that were incomplete that we never heard from the voters. And when you don't hear from a voter on their voter registration application, that's odd. You know, I'll kind of give you a comparison. We just processed through about 4,000 applications, a little bit more than 4,000 applications received at the close of books for October and the close of books for the presidential election. Out of those 4,000, we had 50 is all I had, that were HAVA verification letters. That's just Social Security and driver's license type number problems. That's all I had. That's about 1%. But what we were processing over here was much higher than that. That's whenever you realize that you got a problem. And the law being different than what it was 4 years ago, and what we're required to do under that circumstance, and the Secretary of State wanted to be involved. They came and looked at the ones that were the most obvious problems. They've taken those for investigation. They're going to refer the cases they've been able to make to the local district attorneys. And there'll be probably a couple in Caddo that will be looked at by the local DA.
Okay. And the early voting is going quite well at this time.
Ken, to be honest with you, it's overwhelming.
What about?
I'm so glad to be here. I don't know what to do.
You have a final tally on the amount of registered voters for Caddo?
I think it's 161,885, and we still got people rolling off of pending. You know that when we came up with the National Voter Registration Act, you've got a 10-day pending. So based on when we put you into the computer, you still got 10 days we do that address verification. Right. So the numbers will continue to climb as we go along. We won't have a really good pre-election number till probably about Monday, because we were still putting people in. I'm just trying to think in my head, somewhere around the 13th or 14th. So 23rd, 24th, 25, somewhere in there we'll actually, and I think today's the 23rd, but somewhere along in there we will actually start seeing the number that's probably going to be just about right for Election Day. That pending law kind of makes that number float until we get them all done. The ones that aren't done, let's say 10 days in advance, go to what we call the supplemental. They still get to vote,
right? Okay.
But the numbers kind of fluctuate a little bit, so it's going to be a record registration, to be honest with you. I'm looking forward to it, to tell you the truth. It's going to be a tough day, but you know, you rarely ever see this many people interested in democracy anymore, so I'm glad to see it.
I have Mr. Jenkins and Ms. Lynch. Mr. Jenkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Good afternoon.
See you, Commissioner.
No, I was equally alarmed, just as Commissioner Epperson said, because I've been around a number of presidential elections now. I think this may have been the first time I've seen a United States Senator come stand on the steps of the courthouse and make allegations of widespread voter fraud. Having said that, now, if anyone is engaged in something like that, they should be answerable for it, because that's wrong. It's not the way the system ought to work, and no one should try to weaken the system or compromise it that way. The early voting that's taking place, there are some complaints that it's going pretty slow, but I can understand that. It's an unusually high number of people. And do you feel like you got adequate staffing in place to take care of that?
No, but the second part of that is that the registrar's office in Caddo is the most understaffed major jurisdiction in the state of Louisiana. We have 7 people that's set in state law. It has not changed since 1976. We have 7 people. They handle 23,000 voters apiece. That includes me. I have 4 classified state employees in that 7. They would be handling over 40,000 apiece. To compare it, East Baton Rouge has an allocated staff of 17. Jefferson has an allocated staff of 17. Orleans also has an allocated staff of more than 17. Of course, right now they're down some because they've been losing people pretty regularly, unfortunately. And I've gone to the legislature to try to get that raised, Commissioner Jenkins. I just haven't been successful in that. And the problem, to be honest with you, is we have to use so many temporaries, but there's some key positions I'm not going to use a temporary. Number one is I'm not going to use a temporary to check out your voter eligibility. I'm going to use a full-time staffer.
But why is the support not there to get you the personnel that you need? Has that been involved?
I don't know. I've had support from our delegation, but the problem is you get to committee with it, and you know, anytime there's a cost involved, then you go to, say, House and Governmental, and one time we tried it just for the larger parishes, because we're the ones really getting caught with it. To kind of give you an idea, the top 6 parishes in Louisiana have over 40% of the voters in the state. Whenever you take the top 15, it's over 70, or right at 70% of the voters in the state. And then one time we got tacked on by some of the smaller parishes. They wanted to add somebody. Well, the cost became so large that when we got to appropriations, we couldn't even get really the bill up to be heard in appropriations. And that's been our problem, to be honest with you, is the larger parishes are getting hit the hardest. And Caddo really gets hit. I mean, we really do, and we have to do it with the best we can, which is with a lot of temporaries. And they're good workers. They work hard, but when it comes to your eligibility and anybody else's eligibility and checking you in during early voting and making sure that we get the right person in that state computer system, every person you're going to see working that process is going to be a full-time person. I have 4, and they kind of rotate between those 3 spots.
Right, and I have confidence in what you do at the voter registrations office, and I have confidence in what our clerk's office do. And that's why I was a little concerned and a little dismayed that, you know, I would look in the paper and see some allegation of widespread voter fraud. Don't y'all vet those applications and things like that when they come through, right?
Oh yes, oh yes. And that's the thing that we caught. And really the problem is always, it doesn't matter if it's just here or anywhere, but it's generally it revolves around paid voter registration groups. And the state does need, as I've talked with Secretary Darden, and he's going to be proposing some legislation. State does need to look at, if you're going to pay people to register people to vote, and I'm not talking about community groups of any sort, but if you're going to pay people to register to vote, then you should be registered with the state, literally like a corporation, and there should be some responsibility. And whenever the investigators go to talk to people, you have the group saying, well, we're not responsible because they're independent contractors, and then you can't find the independent contractors. There's really no way to know who's what. Well, in this particular instance, this group has provided some names and addresses, and they have talked to some people, and hopefully they're going to go forward with some investigations, because I think it's that serious. But we need to know, if you're going out to represent yourself as helping someone to register to vote, and you're being paid to do that, then you probably need to be signing that card as a witness. That would be one way that we could go about it. And possibly some bonding requirements. There are a lot of ideas that could be used for this. But I think and we're not talking about community groups. It isn't about a local group. I have no problems with local groups. It's this particular group that came in, and we cannot allow people who are highly skilled at manipulating the system to create a complete logjam, because what if I'd gotten those 8,600 applications the last day of registration, October 6th? I'm not sure what we'd be doing right now.
And I understand and I agree with you wholeheartedly, but you know, as we stand here today, do you feel like the people of this parish could have confidence in the results of the November 4th election?
Oh, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. All right, Ms. Lynch?
Ernie?
Hello.
Let me just say that voter registration does not necessarily equate voting.
Correct.
And I think what you do and what the clerk's office does keeps integrity in that process. And that just because you have, I guess, fraudulent voter registrations, does that mean that there's voter fraud, correct?
That's correct.
Because there are checks and
correct.
balances through the whole system. The process you described is a check and balance. When they get to the polls, there's a check and balance because you've got to have ID. If you don't, you know, there's some I guess, things if you're going to vote provisionally. And then even that's a check and balance once it gets back to your office.
That's correct.
So I want to be sure that people understand that some of these fraudulent voter registrations does not mean that there are going to be thousands of quote-unquote fraudulent voters on election day. The people that are voting on election day are people who have been duly vetted and are legitimate voters and have gone through that process. So I just wanted to make that clear.
Anybody that just doesn't meet the standard of what the federal or state law is sent through a verification process. If they don't respond to that verification, then they're sent a rejection letter. And it changed significantly whenever we went to the motor voter law, because it isn't an automatic voter registration, it's a voter registration application. And the person is treated as an applicant until they go through the entire process. And that might include mailing it to their house, and if it comes back to me, as it did on some of the things that we did, then you still don't get registered to vote, because if you don't meet the mail verification standards, you're back out again. Right. And but what it means, and this is my real fear, there may have been people, and I think this is what we're going to have to be looking at this election. There may have been people who were new to the process, who, first of all, did not understand that that was an application. They think they're registered to vote. They never got a card. They don't understand that they were supposed to get a voter ID card. They may have gotten some mail from me, didn't know what it was, thought it was an offer for, you know, a Dodge or something, and so they just tossed it. And they did not respond to that, and they got rejected, and they didn't get the point of that. And a lot of times people who are new to the process just don't get it. And so it's election day, and they don't know where to go vote. They show up at some poll, and they're not on the list. And what that does for election day, and the problem that we're going to have at the polls, not only are you going to have lost voters, and I don't think you're going to have thousands and thousands of people who didn't understand the process. I think you may have some 100 people who may be in that boat. But we really are at the point where we have to ask ourselves, like in our case, we have 7 people who are full-time to do this.
Well, let me ask
Campaigns
you, what can we do as a legislative body? Because we go to Baton Rouge, and of course we are in constant contact with our delegation. What is it that we can do specifically to help bring some bear upon that situation?
Thank you for asking that. The major parishes in this state need more attention when it comes to staffing, to be quite honest with you. Caddo in particular. The fact that we're doing 23,000 voters, and even in most major jurisdictions, they're only handling 15,000 voters, but that's too many. We have to be honest with ourselves that our role has completely changed since 1976, when the only way you got registered was to show up at the registrar's office, produce your ID, and then fill out the voter registration form. Now we take in thousands of by-mail applications, DMV applications. We need support politically, to be quite honest with you, in the session to come up with a workable bill and one that can make its way through the legislature.
We can certainly, I guess, consider doing a resolution in support or a letter or something and putting you on our, I guess, list.
Thank you.
For when we go down. Thank you, that's all.
Thank you.
Okay, all right, I don't see anybody else, so.
Y'all not gonna keep me here?
Yeah, I tell you what, you can hang around, you can hang around, we won't tell nobody.
You could arrest me for a while.
Mike, stay over here.
Ken, you wanna introduce the last one?
Keith McClung, please, Facilities Director.
Everybody knows him, but, you know. I'm only giving you 5 minutes.
Y'all didn't save the best for last for a reason, did you? Facilities Maintenance Department is responsible for 92 polling places to see that they're ADA compliant. We do this by filling out a questionnaire, really a survey the Secretary of State provides, and we fill that out on all the polling places and mail it in. Anytime there's a polling place change, we have to fill out the same survey and mail it to the Secretary of State, ensuring it's ADA compliant, which means parking, have enough restroom facilities, telephones, and electric plugs for the machines.
Mm-hmm.
What our department normally does what we always do on an election, about 2 weeks before the election, we mail out letters to the polling places notifying them that they're having an election, what the date of the election is. On a normal election, we usually have one person available that works close with Mr. Robertson and the clerk of court with any problems they may have that day. Go out and solve the problems through, you know, it may be a trip breaker on the machine, or it could be anything. This time, because of the high voter turnout, we're going to have additional staff, about 4 or 5 additional and more if we need them. One thing that's going to help this year, schools are closed, as they are on all presidential elections, but the schools being closed, it's going to make it a lot easier for parking and people getting in and out. We also furnish signs that they request, parking signs and different things that are needed like that. We furnish about 30 cell phones for the polling places that do not have phones. We do that every year. Today we went out and checked Grace United Methodist Church. They had an issue about they wanted to have the voters come in a different way because they figured the line would be long, and got a better way for the voters to come in. They'll be able to be inside. That's just one of the things we do. And like I said earlier, we just work close with register voters and clerk of court. Kind of whatever they need, we go try to take care of it the best we can. Any questions?
You're clear as a bell. Oh.
President Cox and Commissioners, we do have 150 polling places, right? You mentioned 92, 150?
That's precincts.
Precincts?
Double precincts.
Yeah. Okay. And we will be open for business that day too at the parish, so we're not closed that day. We'll be open for business.
We're not?
No. Coming to work?
That's not a day off.
It's Tuesday.
Yeah, that's not a day off.
Well, he's gonna be given an opportunity to go vote that day.
Sir, everybody will be given an opportunity to vote, sir.
All right, Mike, I appreciate you.
All right.
Thank you. All right,
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You, sir. Is that all from the administration?
On their own
Yes, sir,
time.
that's all, sir.
Okay. All right. I have one card, but that's pertaining to a zoning case, so we'll bring that visitor up after this. Okay, no more anything on that.
Move to go
Public
back
hearing?
into regular session.
Sir, with that exception. Public hearing on zoning cases, Mr. Spears.
Yes, sir. Zoning case BAP 6, Ark and Cheryl McAllister's applicants. The zoning board of appeals denied their request. They appealed and remanded back to the ZBA, and now it's coming back to us.
Okay. Is anyone here to speak on favor of this ordinance or zoning case? And I would assume that's the card I have, so. No? Okay. Okay, if you would, State your name and address.
My name is Clark McAllister. I reside at 201 Sweet Gum Drive, Houghton, Louisiana.
Okay. Go ahead.
Yes, what I'm requesting is to have a secondary residence on a piece of property on Dixie Garden. I would like to build my home behind the existing house that is there and use the front house as a rental property, possibly for one of my family members. I got 2 children that are still in town, one going to college and one fixing to graduate, so possibly move one of them in there. If not, then use this rental property, but build my house behind that house about 275 feet. And that's what I'd like to do.
Short, sweet, and simple, huh?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That it? Yes, ma'am. Name and address.
Carol McAllister, 201 Sweet Gum Drive, Houghton, Louisiana. I concur.
Okay.
2 letters of support if y'all would like to see them. Or
We've got all that?
Yeah.
okay.
Okay. Thank you. Is there anyone here? Is there anyone else here to speak in favor of this? Okay. Is anyone here to speak against this? Would you please step forward? State your name, address.
My name's Mike Mooney, and my wife and I have lived in Dixie Garden for 44 years now.
Address, please, sir.
Sir?
Your address. I didn't.
4944 Dixie Garden.
Thanks, sir.
I want to be brief, but yet I want to make a point of something which is concerning many of the folks in Dixie Garden. The first thing I want to say that I haven't spoken to a person that's against Mr. McAllister coming out, and I hope I got your name pronounced right. No one is concerned about him being in Dixie Garden. What we are concerned with is, since we are a rural community, we do not want a large business out there and don't know how to stop this. We really, truly don't know how to stop it. Now, I happen to be on a small committee on this oil thing. It has nothing to do with this situation, other than the fact that I was one of 7 people that was going from one side of the community to the other about the oil thing. Well, this other thing came up a time or two, and they made it clear to me they don't mind if the gentleman and his family come and join Dixie Garden. But we do not want a large building, and the last we heard, in fact, I saw some plans, they may be void and not worthy for either to mention here, but there was a 70,000, I think, square foot building to be put on the acreage on Dixie Garden, and Mr. McAllister had told several people in his unique and small little neighborhood there that that was going to be his business. Well, that's what alarmed people, because we don't want, obviously he's done well to be in business, and he's done well, period. But we do not want him to bring the trucks, which he's made a good living with over the years, into Dixie Garden when we have children there, horses and cows and chickens and whatever we've had in Dixie Garden for a long time before I got there, since I think it was the mid-20s when that community was first born. But this is maybe not the right place to ask, and I don't know the proper procedure to follow, but we just want to make sure that no matter how fine a family he has, that he doesn't take advantage of the community and build huge buildings And by the way, there's nothing wrong with the huge buildings. We've got lots of people in Dixie Garden that have large buildings. They have barns, they have, we have one gentleman a couple doors down from me that has a large warehouse, and he keeps his old cars in it. Well, that's fine, but you don't see him running up and down the road making a living with these old cars. Now, the last time we had a dispute with Mr. McAllister, one point that I made to the committee was that his property is right in a curve, just a short way away from Riverside School. And it wasn't a week later that a horse wasn't killed right on the spot, probably 50 yards from his house. And that's what we're concerned about. Now, the little girl wasn't on her horse, but the horse has gone to heaven. And it is a dangerous spot to have dump trucks and working materials coming in and out of the premise. Now, I don't know if he's going to do that or not now, but he told several people within the, as I said, that he was going to build them come heck or high water. And we didn't appreciate that. Now, I would like an explanation at your convenience if you could tell us how we can protect ourselves after he builds a nice home and everything. You can't tell the man not to build something else on his property, but once he gets in there, we don't want the business, a large construction business, and he's obviously worked hard for years and built a fine business. But we don't want it there in Dixie Garden. Okay. And I'm grateful for this time. I'll take leave of this podium and get over there, and maybe somebody can explain to me how we protect ourselves from him building a large building. No, not the large building. That's not what I wanted to say. But a large business where there's a lot of traffic coming in and out right in that curve. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Spears?
Yes, sir.
Anything else? That concludes our...
That's all of the zoning cases, public hearing, yes.
All right, next.
We have public hearing on your regular ordinances. First one being ordinance 4809, amend your juvenile justice fund budget in the amount of $54,000 to accept a grant from U.S. Department of Education.
Move.
Second.
There's public hearing on.
Yeah, it's a public hearing.
Oh, I'm sorry, let's do it.
Okay. Anyone here in favor of this? Anyone here against this? Mr. Spears?
Ordinance 4810 relocates the polling place for precinct 39 from Our Lady of the Blessed Sacrament Academy, Murphy Street, to J.S. Clark Middle School on Hearn Avenue.
Is there anyone here to speak in favor of this? Anyone here to speak against this? Spears?
Ordinance 4811 declares certain adjudicated properties to be needed for a public purpose.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of this? Speak against this? Mr. Spears?
Ordinance 4812 authorizes the sale of tax interest in certain adjudicated properties.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of this? Anyone here to speak against this? Mr. Spears?
Ordinance 4813 closes an abandoned Helpmate Road.
Is anyone here to speak in favor of this? Anyone here to speak against this? Mr. Spears?
That's all of the public hearing on the ordinances, sir.
Okay. Work session minutes, October 6th and October 20th.
So moved.
Been moved by Commissioner Dominic, second by Commissioner Smith. Any questions on these? Oh, is that Mr. Thibodeau?
Mr. Thibodeau.
I'm sorry, we changed that to Mr. Thibodeau. My hearing ain't good on the left side. No questions, please vote.
That's the side John is on.
Okay, and that passes. Zoning ordinances for final passage, Mr. Spears?
Yes, sir. Go right back to the same one we just had the public hearing on, Mr. McAllister's application for residence in Dixie Garden.
Okay, I have a motion. Or
So moved. I'd like to move to overturn ZBA, and I'd like to speak on my motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved by Commissioner Escudero, second by Commissioner Dominic, to overturn the ZBA, and you have the floor, sir.
Okay, Charles, I'll need your help. It's my understanding that whether, basically the situation in a nutshell is this, as Mr. McAllister explains. There's an existing house there. There's a whole lot of property in the back. He wants to build a secondary residence in the back.
Right.
As far as the MPC is concerned, if we deny him, if he is denied, if this is upheld, he can tear down the primary residence and build whatever he wants out there because he's perfectly within his rights to do so. I know the property and know the area well. It's my opinion, I don't know about Mr. Kirkland, that with what he's wanting to do, it's best to leave the existing structure there for aesthetic purposes and let him build his home in the back. Charles, what do you think?
Well, of course, the board voted 4-2 to deny the request for secondary, and of course my role is to support the board's decision. There were 2 board members who clearly advocated what you just said, and that if you've looked at this site, and I know you probably have, John, but I don't know if others have, it is in a curve, as Mr. Lemoyne said, but it's a narrow lot. And so you don't, it's not the same as having 300 or 400 or 500 feet of frontage. But if you look at it as you come around that curve, or even if you're trying to drive slowly through the neighborhood, this house would serve as the small house that's there. It's a traditional frame home that was built back in probably the 50s or earlier, and sort of traditional looking wood frame house. It would serve to actually screen this larger home from workshop areas, etc., from the street and the viewpoint of the neighbors. If you drive back in there, you just see a large barn on the south side, and you see a rather large structure back up on the right side, and it's certainly not out of keeping with those, from my opinion. But anyway.
It's my understanding that if we don't allow him to proceed in the manner that he wants to, that he can tear down the existing home and then build what he wants to build out there without having to ask for anything.
Absolutely. He gets a permit, and that's it. If I may, Mr. Escudero, one other point. Some of the neighborhood, and sounds like some of the opponents, have now centered on not the secondary residence question, but more on the commercial use of the property. If Mr. McAllister were to in any way try to store equipment there, or lumber, or any other materials from a job site, other than for use on that site, he couldn't put construction equipment out there, backhoe, tractors, etc., other than what would be used to maintain that site, like a tractor, a small tractor with a bush hog on it, for example. But if he starts any form of trying to use that as a commercial site for his construction business, he's going to be in violation, and we're going to be all over him to the extent of even taking him to court and let a local district judge tell him, you know, what a violation is. And our record of violations, as Jim Smith knows from having been on the board, it takes us a while to get a zoning violation dealt with, but we do ultimately get them dealt with, and the local judges will uphold that.
Generally, what's the process for that? Who goes and reports, makes report of the violation, of the alleged violation?
Well, if a neighbor, and believe me, the Dixie Garden folks, I know most of them, a lot of them personally, they would call us and let us know the first time he tried to pull a tractor in and out of there or anything else. We'd send one of our inspectors out to affirm that. Wouldn't be that hard if he were going in and out on a regular basis. Or we have the right to inspect the property and see what would be violation. You're not going to be putting backhoes and other things back there for your personal use. But regardless, we would eventually get a complaint verified and go to the DA, and we'd deal with it from there.
Is there, the process is you have your complaint and you file it with the district attorney's office, and that's where it ends up?
Well, actually, your lawyers, or Mr. Grubb and Ms. Frazier, would be the first ones we talk to, and they assist us in getting those violations dealt with.
They haven't drugged their feet in the past on you on this kind of stuff,
and
have
they've not been bashful, you know.
Take long. I mean, if somebody's in violation, it shouldn't take long.
No. Well, it takes us sometimes 30, 60, 90 days or more. It's just the process we go through. For example, we'd have to cite him for a violation. He's got 10 days to correct. Without going into all of it, we follow the procedures, but eventually violators do get stopped.
Okay, Charles, I'm finished, thank you.
Mr. Thibodeau.
Charles.
The zoning on that property is what, RA?
R1D,
R1D?
single-family residence.
And what will it change? Will it change to R2?
No, sir. What it will do is leave the R1D base, and the exception use would allow the secondary residential, so it would allow a second residential home without changing the zoning.
Okay.
One
So it's
would
just
say you
R1D
have
with
added a
exception.
right to the basic right that would be there.
Okay, that's all.
Don't go nowhere.
Is that it?
No, I got a question. On most cases, you know, we've had some cases come up here in the rural area. Guy wants to build a building or another house on his acreage. I take it this Dixie Garden, as low as it has been, they don't have a covenants?
Well, they don't have any covenants that I'm aware of. If they do, of course, they can certainly exercise those privately as a civil matter. But as you guys know, anywhere in the parish or in the RA districts or whatnot, there are no rules that preclude any size barn or whatever from being built. So it's, in fact, it's more common than not to have large buildings in rural areas.
You know, when John brought up the point where, you know, if we don't do this, he can tear the front building down and do whatever he wants to. That's a catch-22 here that I'm trying to grasp onto, and because I remember a case back in gentleman in Keithville, I believe it was, who wanted to build his daughter a house on 4 acres that he bought.
Right.
And he would have to divide it, and we turned it down.
Right. And the point is, the opponent said, it wasn't centered on the secondary residential. It was the possible commercial use of the new structure.
Okay.
And so that's not really even germane to what he's requesting that you do.
Okay. All right. Mr. Escadade?
Mr. Mooney. Mr. Mooney?
Mr. Mooney?
Come forward, please.
Come up here, please.
Yes, sir.
How you doing today?
I'm doing fine, sir.
I understand and appreciate your concerns, especially with the use of this property being for business purposes. And Hollister has assured me that's not going to be the case, and I'll have to take him at his word. I do know this, and he knows if he does, I'm going to be the first phone call that will be gotten. And I don't like phone calls concerning these kind of things, so you won't have to rely on Mr. Kirkland to go out there. I'll drag Mr. Kirkland out there and cite him if it's in the middle of the night. Are you aware of the fact that if we leave it as is, that he will, and probably more than likely will tear down that house and then build what he's talking about, and there's nothing anybody can do to stop him from that?
I've been told that, yes, sir. And that's not the point that we're concerned about.
I understand.
Yes, sir.
I understand about the business use. I'm asking you, I just want to be clear.
Yes, sir.
You realize that if we do not grant what he wants, he can turn down that house, tear it down, and build what he wants to, actually closer to the road, and he will. And there's nothing we can do legally, or you can do to stop him.
Okay.
Now that's reality. I'm not saying I necessarily like it. That's the situation. So I guess my question is, would you rather have him build what he's going to build behind that house, and we watch him like a hawk, and hopefully he's a stand-up guy and does the right thing, or would you rather see him tear down that house and build everything up closer to the road?
Do I understand that he is, we're going to have this rezoned for him to build?
No. If he's allowed to tear his house down,
yes, sir,
he has to do nothing to build what he wants to build.
Okay.
Just get his building permits, I imagine. So all he's got to do. So.
Okay.
Now you understand a little better the
Oh,
situation
yes, sir, I
we're
do,
in?
and I appreciate you taking an extra moment or so to explain it to me.
I had to have it explained to me, so.
That took 2 or 3 times.
During our last meeting, he showed us a picture of the plans and had a nice drawing and so forth. And it's obviously not a house. It's a building for something other than to live in it. There wasn't even going to be a bathroom in it, as I understand. Now, he may have changed all this.
He's got some new plans, and even with the new plans, I personally wouldn't want to live there. It looks a little bit too much more like a hobby room than a house to me. But It doesn't matter what, at this point, what you or I would prefer. If we don't let him do what he wants to do, he'll tear down that old house, he's gonna build that thing.
Okay, well, I don't think there's
And-
any resentment to him building a, we have several folks out there that have nice buildings that are for their hobbies and stuff.
Well, so what I'm asking you, you'd rather, you wanna let him do what he wants to do and leave the existing house there that's been there forever, that looks nice, and let him do what he wants to do behind there? Or do you wanna not do it and let him build that thing up close to the road? Because one way or another, he's gonna build that thing. I mean, that's just the reality of it, and we can't stop it. He doesn't need zoning to do it, and he can put it right up on the street if he wants to. So, we kinda gotta hold our nose and decide what we want. Would you rather keep that old house there? I think it'd be a nice buffer to what he's gonna do out there, and we'll just have to watch him like a hawk on the other. I'm sure y'all will.
I'm fine with that, just as long as we don't see dump trucks coming and going and running over horses or children and I keep referring to dump trucks. Frankly, I'm not exactly sure what business he's in, but he's done well and he has large equipment.
Well, you assume he's done well. I'm not, he looks fat, but that doesn't mean he's done well.
His name is John Escadade. He's your representative.
Nothing by the, actually, no, Mr. McCollister. I've known him. I'm just saying, that's an assumption. You know, you look pretty healthy. You've done well, obviously. So have I.
Yeah, I'm pretty healthy. We're just concerned about the business end of it.
Well, I intend on watching that. I know the MPC will, and you have my word, and I'm sure y'all will be diligent about it. But if I were you, I'd rather let him build what he wants to behind that nice old house that's there, rather than have it torn down. And then, as I hope you understand, he doesn't need permission to do anything.
Oh, I understand that.
Okay.
I mean, I've had people 2 doors down from me build big old building, you know, and that's part of the uniqueness of Dixie Garden. We just don't want that an industrial type, commercial type business out there.
Well, that we can monitor.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. I'd, in closing, just like to ask all of your support in overturning the MPC's decision. Thank you.
Okay. Have no more names. We have a motion and a second. So a yes vote would overturn the ZBA. So at this time, please vote. And that passes the overturn of the ZBA. Next issue. Ordinance of final passage. Mr. Spears?
Yes, sir. Ordinance 4809 amends your juvenile justice fund budget to accept a grant.
Okay, I got 2 so moves. I got Mr. Thibodeau.
Get it right.
In Globo, ordinances 4809 through 4813.
Second.
All right, we have a motion to englobo 4809 to 4813 from Mr. Thibodeau, seconded by Commissioner Jenkins. Any questions on the englobo motion? If not, please vote. And that passes. Mr. Spears?
Ordinances for introduction by title. First one is ordinance 4836, declares certain adjudicated properties to be surplus, and per the agreement with the city of Shreveport and the parish relative to the vacant lot dollar program. Ordinance 4837 authorizes acceptance of an irrevocable donation of certain property located in the parish from OSL Properties LLP. Ordinance 4838 revokes dedication of a portion of Denise Drive in Crest Ridge Farm subdivision in the parish. Ordinance 4839 revokes dedication of Frierson Road. Ordinance 4840 authorizes the administrator to execute an act of donation of adjudicated property to Praise Temple Full Gospel Baptist Church. Ordinance 4841 authorizes the administrator to execute an act of donation of adjudicated property to Fairfield United Methodist Church. Ordinance 4842 declares properties to be surplus and authorizes the sale of the tax interest therein. Ordinance 4843 authorizes the sale of surplus property owned by the parish.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any resolutions?
Resolution 34 supports proposed amendment number 4 to House Bill 420 relative to severance tax revenues. So moved.
Okay. So moved by Commissioner Escadade, seconded by Commissioner, who was second? Dominic. Any questions? If not, please vote. do better than I can. And that passes. At this time, any old business, Mr. Spears?
None on the agenda, sir.
New business?
From the reappointment of Mr. George Wilson to the Board of Sewer District Number 7.
So moved.
Move. Second.
Been moved by Commissioner Escaday, second by Commissioner Jenkins. Ms. Lynch?
I'm gonna make a motion to englobe all of these appointments effective immediately.
Second.
Mr. Wilson to the Sewer District 7, Dean Irwin to Sewer District 7, and Kevin Stewart to Fire District Number 7.
We have a motion by Commissioner Lynch, second by Commissioner Dominic to englobo the appointments of George Wilson, Dean Irwin, Kevin Stewart. Appointment immediately. Yes vote will do that. And that englobo passes. If there's no other, business, any comments? Adjourned.